Hi, I'm Alex Barron with Digital Research, and I'm sitting here in San Francisco, the Soma district, with the CEO of Nitrous, Alex Malinovich. Hi there, could you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Alex Malinovich. I'm the CEO of Nitrous. We're a platform focused on allowing developers to collaborate in the cloud. Prior to this, I was at GitHub as the VP of Enterprise Sales, helping grow out that team and helping figure out how developer tools for enterprises really work.
Okay, perfect. So I understand with Nitrous it's a developer environment. Could you talk about what is a typical customer or typical user of Nitrous?
Right now, our typical users are kind of all over the place because it's really anyone who is into development, right? There's lots of students, there's lots of professional developers, there's developers in enterprises. It's anyone who would actually be using a development tool, anyone who would be writing code for whatever purpose. That's our typical user.
Okay, perfect. Now I understand you target a number of different groups, students, startups, individual developers, as well as enterprise. Could you sort of break down what are the primary benefits for these major use cases?
So for students, it's pretty obvious. For students, we provide a very easy way of getting into coding. Traditionally, developers have had to learn how to set up complicated development environments with various IDEs and various tools for compiling and for running their services. And these are all things that were necessary, but they never really should have been part of the development experience. So what we're doing is really allowing students to kind of bypass that part and get directly into the process of writing code and actually being productive. For professional developers, it's a completely different set of functionality, or it's a completely different set of goals. Because with professional developers, they already have those tools set up. They've already gone through the process of setting up their development environment exactly the way that they want it. But the way they've been doing it and the way they've been setting up those tools is kind of old. It's the way development has been done for 30, 40 years. It hasn't really changed in that time, especially given by the fact that the editors that most developers are using now are tools that were written in the 70s, right? There's been no big growth in this market. So what we're really providing is a whole new way for developers to work together. You have live collaboration, where while you're editing your code, somebody else can be watching you do that, and it doesn't matter if they're sitting right next to you or if they're halfway across the world. When it's time to actually run your code, you can easily take a snapshot of your current development environment and share it with someone else on the team and give them the ability to run exactly the thing that you're currently running. And the possibilities from there just keep going out, right? If you can share a snapshot with another developer, you can also take that snapshot and put it on a staging environment. You can also now start looking at deployment options, all starting with this very basic premise of we're just going to have a single place in the cloud where you can do all of your development, where we provide all the tools and you just don't have to think about it.
Okay, perfect. Now I understand the company was founded in Singapore, is that right?
Yes.
And you still have a development office there and here, so it sounds like you're probably eating your own dog food, is that fair to say?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
The company was originally founded in Singapore, and we started growing over there, but very early on, as a startup, you really need to look at San Francisco, right? Especially the Bay Area. You really have to see about coming out here, getting investment, getting the connections that you need to really get the company off the ground. But having the team in Singapore has been amazingly helpful. It's not very often that a small startup can claim to be a multinational corporation, right? But it gives us so much more agility, because now we have teams that are working almost around the clock, but yet they're all working in their own particular time zones. And because our tools are so focused on collaboration and allowing developers to work together regardless of where they happen to be, we can actually explore what that means even more so. Our team in Singapore is collaborating with our US team constantly, and we're all using Nitrous to actually do that.
Perfect. So in terms of customers, is there a success story or use case that you find especially interesting and would like to share?
There's quite a few. Obviously for students, we love hearing about the types of experiences students have had getting started. One of the things that I heard earlier this week was a description of kids who are just in high school who are just learning how to code. And when they first start up Nitrous, they just feel like they're hackers. and that feels awesome. They think that's fantastic, right? And I love giving that feeling to people, and I love being able to be in a company that is focused on building that sort of a tool. That not just makes programming easier to do, that doesn't just help business, but that also helps individuals really explore their passions. Because these same individuals are the ones who are going to be starting up the next generation of companies in another 10, 15 years, right? So we're kind of setting up this potential outcome. On the business side of things, it's really amazing to watch what types of things people actually end up doing when they're given these sorts of tools. Our initial idea was this is just your development environment. It's just you log in and you do your work, and if you need to share code, you can do that, right? But it's kind of simple. What we didn't really realize is that people would get very creative with what they want to do. There's design shops, companies that specialize in basically building websites for other people that really love the fact that each of these development environments can actually be self-contained. So for us, it was originally intended as a way to have different languages separated to give you like different ways of testing. We didn't really think that, hey, this is a fantastic way of having multiple environments set up. They're completely distinct from each other, right? But if you're a developer, your toolkit doesn't change. Your development environment doesn't change. You don't have to have a separate laptop for every customer you're dealing with. You have a fully dedicated environment for each customer, and you just kind of switch them out as you go through. And it's very consistent. Your way of interacting with that environment never really changes. It's just the data behind that changes dynamically, with all dependencies and all these kinds of technical problems taken care of for you, so you don't really have to think about it.
So in terms of competition, obviously there's some other development, cloud development environments out there. How does Nitrous differentiate from those other companies?
So a lot of the current space around web IDEs and web development has really traditionally been focused just on what can you do in the text editor, right? When you're editing your code, what can you do that actually gives you some sort of a different experience? And our focus from day one has been more on the back end, has been focusing more on how do we actually provide reusable tools? How do we provide this environment that you can kind of take with you from place to place and easily switch out while still putting the tools on top of it? We are focusing on tools as well. We want to make sure developers have a good experience, but especially for professional developers, there's no point in having a great experience if you can't do anything with the code afterwards. So it's that ability to make your entire environment very portable, preferably within Nitrous, but also outside of it as well, that is a really big feature from our view.
Okay, perfect. So let's change gears a little bit. I want to know a little bit more about the company's history and story. I understand you weren't there in the early days, but from what you understand, what was sort of the initial sort of inspiration behind Nitrous, and what were the early days of the company like?
So the company was founded in Singapore by Arun, AJ, and Pete. They all three had met out there. Incidentally, none of them were originally from Singapore. It was this great kind of melting pot experience. And they were at a meetup and they started talking about various ideas. And one of the things that came out is this kind of abstract idea of collaborating in the cloud, right? How do you have developers that actually can collaborate very well from anywhere, from whatever machine they're using and so on. But it started out as kind of this kind of pie in the sky sort of idea. It was after that they decided, hey, maybe there's actually something here. So they decided to start Nitrous, called Action.io at the time, the original company name. And when they started the company, they immediately started focusing on building this collaborative environment. What was really unexpected was just how ready people were for it. As soon as it became available, people started signing up like crazy because everybody wanted to use this. A year prior, it would have been a joke to anyone to say that developers might want to actually work in a web browser. And now suddenly you have this influx of people who really, really want to work in the browser. They don't want to worry about anything. They just want to do all their work in the browser. So it was really an amazing feat to get a company to grow so quickly, to get adoption so quickly, to get people really interested so quickly.
Okay, excellent. So it sounds like there were some early wins and successes in those early days, but what were the major challenges for them as far as you know?
I think one of the biggest challenges was obviously having started out in Singapore and then having to recognize the reality that if you want to get investors, if you want to have the connections that you need, you're kind of forced to come to the Bay Area. So having started out in Singapore and having to essentially move the whole company over was definitely a difficult thing, especially with immigration laws and so on. It can be very difficult. The government doesn't care if you're a founder, they just care that you want to come into the country. So there's definitely some difficulties there. I think overall, getting a team built up to do something like what Nitrous is doing, to do something that really hasn't been done before, is really difficult. It's much easier when you're giving people kind of an obvious problem that you need help solving. Whereas when it's something that a lot of people wouldn't even recognize as a problem until after they've used the solution, I think growing out the team and figuring out how to effectively do that can be pretty challenging. And obviously doing all that on a shoestring budget without having actually raised the investment yet can be very difficult.
Okay, perfect. So you guys obviously had some good success here. Do you have any advice for other startup founders here or back in Japan?
Absolutely. The biggest thing in my experience with working in any startup is that it's very, very easy, especially early on, to get discouraged. It's very easy to think, this is really hard, we can't do this. There's other companies out there that are bigger than us and faster than us and that might be able to do this better than us, right? But if that was the case, you would see this happening all the time. And you don't, because what it really takes is that drive and that passion, that perseverance that you have in a small company, where it's not just the founder who cares about the company, it's not just the executives who care about the company. Every single person inside that organization is really, really focused on the future growth of that company. And that's a thing that you just can't replicate outside of that sort of startup environment. It's really having the passion and the drive throughout the entire organization to really drive towards what it is that you're all hoping to achieve and to get the successes that you're wanting to see.
Okay, so what's next for Nitrous?
Our biggest focus right now is really thinking about how can we make the experience for professional developers, particularly at larger companies, more effective. We've already had a great deal of success with students, we've already had a great deal of success with small developers, but the real next step is not just helping developers at large organizations as individuals, not just giving an individual developer the tools that he or she needs, but giving entire development teams the tools that they need to work more effectively together. The feature that we're going to be pushing out over the next month or so is Nitrous for Teams. It's something we've already started Dogfooding internally here. And it's really this focus on what changes when you're actually able to work with your entire team in kind of a collaborative shared space. Traditionally, even with our collaboration features, it's still very much a one-on-one experience. I can have a coding session with you, but that's about it. But now we're exploring the real implications of what happens when you take your entire team and they're all kind of in this wide open collaborative area where they can all collaborate on the same things at the same time, and really evaluating what does that mean for businesses, what does that mean for larger teams that are trying to get stuff done, and how can we make that much more effective for them.
Okay, excellent. Now, last thing before we go, where can people go to learn more about Nitrous?
Just go to our website, nitrous.io. We have a lot of documentation that people can browse, especially if you're just getting started into programming. We have great tutorials set up where you can actually learn how to do various things. And for professional developers, you can just go in, sign up, spin up an environment, and start using it.
Okay, and there's a free plan, is that right?
Yes. Okay. There's also a free plan available for everyone. Whether you're a professional user or just a student, you can sign up for the free plan, try the environment for as much as you'd like, and then hopefully switch to the paid plan.
Yeah, I think so. All right, well, thank you very much, Alex, and best of luck.
Thank you.